Hi guys, this is Courtney Murray. I'm actually going to have to split this up into two videos. I do not know why, but my camera will not record past 5 minutes. So after the seventh time trying, I'm just going to create two separate YouTube videos. I apologize, that's pretty annoying, but this is getting old, so we're going to try it this way. I'm actually doing my paper on Indigenous slavery. And the interesting thing about Indigenous slavery is that there isn't a whole lot of information out there prior to 2000, actually. The literature is actually very limited on what is available. And so that creates kind of a gap in the narrative. However, we do have a good start, and that is with a man called Almond Wheeler Lauber. And he is writing in 1913, and his book is called Indian Slavery in Colonial Times Within the Present Limits of the United States. Now, his book is actually not focused on indigenous slavery specifically. It is focused more on the ideas of native slavery within the colonies. So, Indians working alongside Africans. However, he does allow the first part of his book to explore this idea of indigenous slavery. And the key idea to get from Lauber's piece is that indigenous slavery is, in his words, universal. Every single tribe, for the most part, experimented with some form of slavery, whether they were the captor or the captive. They played a role somehow. And he moves that into, why was this such a cultural foundation that almost all the tribes participated in? And we move into this idea of warriors and honor. And, the prestige of a warrior was bringing back captives. It wasn't so much as how many scalps you had. If you brought back a slave, it was worth a whole lot more. And we see that a lot from Brett Rushforth's book, Bonds of Alliances. And he looks into how the success of bringing home captives celebrated in public ceremonies, and James F. Brooks agrees in his book Captives and Cousins: Slavery and Kinship. He says that the capture and ransom of sacred symbols, females, specifically, allowed mundane and latently shameful economic transfers to occur as subtext to the dominant narrative of men's contests over honor. And so we have this idea of men bringing home slaves and allowing them to be celebrated. And that moves us into, well, why? And why were they celebrated? Why was this an important thing? And Rushforth actually touches on this. And basically, it's the importance of slaves. And the slaves were used as pawns, basically to dominate, control, create, and unify. They were used to create alliances with other tribes. They were used as gifts to create friendships. And they were used to incite fear and to expand the already existing territory of the native tribe that had captured them. And so, this idea of these slaves being used more as pawns than a workforce actually has not worked well with some historians, and one in particular was Barbara Cramer in her books Black Slaves and Indian Masters. The purpose of her book was actually about the Native Americans actually owning black slaves, but she does touch on this idea in the first part of her book. And she actually states that indigenous slavery, as we are calling it in this video at least, doesn't exist. That it is actually more of what she calls an unfreedom. It was the holding of war captives as subordinates. And she says we can't really call it slavery because they were often let go or they were often incorporated into the community, and they weren't actually held for workforce or economic gain. And they weren't treated as badly, was her other point. However, many other historians would counter her and say that doesn't work with the ideas of slavery itself. David Bryan Davis, in his book Challenging the Boundaries of Slavery, states that indigenous slavery was a non-economic system of slavery, that it was used to create alliances and traditions and between tribes and so on and so forth. I'm actually going to stop here and start the next video.